After driving 6 hours to surprise my son for his birthday, my daughter-in-law opened the door and sneered, "You're not invited. We have plans with real family." She shut the door in my face, and I spent the night in a cheap motel. The next morning, I knew exactly what I had to do.
My name's Diane.
I'm 61, and I've lived in Missouri my whole life. I was born in Columbia, raised in Jefferson City, and now I rent a little duplex on the edge of town in Rolla. Nothing fancy. Just me, my dog Millie, and my collection of old cookbooks. My son Bradley is all I really have. His dad died in a car accident when Brad was 9. I raised him alone, worked 2 jobs, skipped meals so he could eat, and never took a vacation. I never asked for anything back, just wanted him to live a better life than I had. Bradley moved to Knoxville, Tennessee 5 years ago after marrying a woman named Trina. From the first time I met her, I felt small around her. She wore clothes that looked expensive, talked like she went to college, which she did, and always had a way of making me feel like I didn't belong. She'd laugh at my accent, correct how I said words, and once told me my meatloaf tasted like school cafeteria food. I let it slide. I didn't want to drive a wedge between her and Brad. I figured if I just stayed kind, she'd warm up. But 5 years went by, and it never happened. This year, for Brad's birthday, I wanted to do something special. He always loved my apple cinnamon cake. When he was a kid, I used to make it for every birthday. I hadn't seen him since Christmas, and even then it was only for a few hours. He barely called. I figured surprising him might help us reconnect. I spent 2 weeks prepping. I baked the cake the night before, packed it in a cake carrier, wrapped up a special gift, my late husband's pocket watch, cleaned and fixed by a local jeweler. I even ironed my nicest blouse and put on lipstick. Something I hadn't done in months. I left at 4 in the morning. It's a 6-hour drive to Knoxville. I didn't stop except once for gas and coffee. I was tired and stiff by the time I pulled into their neighborhood. It was sunny out, birds chirping, and I remember thinking, he's going to be so surprised. I walked up to their porch with the cake in my arms, smiling. Trina answered the door. She looked me up and down like I was the pest control guy. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I wanted to surprise Brad for his birthday," I said. "I brought cake." She paused for a second, like she couldn't believe I had the nerve to show up. Then she laughed. Not even a polite one. "We already have plans. With real family." Then she shut the door.
Just like that.
I stood there on the porch for a minute, holding that cake like an idiot. I wanted to believe it was a joke, or maybe he'd come running out. But he didn't. Nobody did. I turned around, walked back to my car, and drove to the nearest motel I could find. Some $49.99 a night place off the freeway. The kind with vending machines and scratchy sheets. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the gift. The cake was sitting in its carrier on the nightstand. It was untouched. I stared at the wall for hours. I didn't even turn the TV on. I didn't cry right away. I just felt hollow. Around 8 p.m., I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not just from sadness, from hurt, from betrayal, from the realization that I wasn't part of my own son's life anymore. And what stung the most? He didn't even call. Not that night. Not the next morning. That's when something in me shifted. If he wasn't going to be my son anymore, then fine. But I wasn't going to keep being a doormat. I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I checked out of that motel and drove to a little diner down the road. I ordered black coffee and toast, but I couldn't eat. My hands were shaking. I kept checking my phone.
Still no call.
Still no message. Not from Brad. Not from Trina. It was like I didn't exist. That's when I decided. I wasn't driving back to Missouri just yet. Instead, I drove 10 minutes to the church Brad and Trina got married in. Pastor Hal was still there. He'd known Brad back when he was in college. He always liked me, said I had a good heart. I walked into his office with the gift box still in my lap. He looked surprised to see me. "Diane? Everything okay?" I told him what happened. Every word. His face got tight, jaw clenched. He said, I'm sorry, Diane. You didn't deserve that. Then I asked him something bold. Pastor, you still in touch with Brad? He nodded slowly. I want to talk to him. But not alone. Not in that house with her. Pastor Hal agreed to help. He called Brad later that afternoon, said he wanted to meet with him at the church. Brad agreed. I waited in the next room, heart pounding, palms sweaty. When Brad walked in, I could hear his voice through the wall. Hey, Pastor. Everything all right? And then Pastor Hal said, Your mother is here. Silence. I stepped into the room. Brad looked pale. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything.
I didn't yell.
I didn't cry. I just said, I drove 6 hours for your birthday. Your wife told me I wasn't family. You didn't even call me. He looked down. I didn't know she said that, he muttered. I handed him the cake carrier and the gift box. This was your cake. That's your grandfather's watch. I was going to give it to you after dinner. But I guess that's not happening. He opened the box, stared at the watch, then looked up. Mom, I'm sorry.
I really am.
But Trina, she's just protective. Things have been tense. I snapped. Tense? Brad, she slammed the door in my face. She laughed at me. And you didn't even check on me. Do you know where I slept last night? In a motel off the freeway. Alone. On your birthday. Pastor Hal stepped in. Brad, this isn't about tension. It's about respect. Your mother loves you. And she deserved better. Brad finally looked me in the eyes. I didn't know what she said, I swear. I thought maybe you had something come up or didn't want to stay long. I could tell he was lying. Or at least trying to believe his own story, so he didn't have to face what really happened.
I didn't argue.
I just nodded and said, I won't beg to be in your life, Brad. But I'm not disappearing quietly either. I walked out, leaving the cake and the gift behind. But I wasn't done. That night, I checked into a better hotel across town. And I started making calls. If Trina thought she could erase me from Brad's life, I'd make sure the truth came out. I didn't know how yet. But I was going to make them both see what they threw away. I spent the next 3 days in Knoxville. I didn't tell anyone I was still in town. I needed time to think, to plan, and to figure out the kind of people my son and his wife really were. I started with social media. Trina's Facebook and Instagram were wide open. What I found made my blood boil. Photos from Brad's birthday. A dinner party in some fancy restaurant. Table set with candles, glasses of wine, 20-something people smiling. Trina in a red dress, holding Brad's hand. The caption? Grateful to spend Brad's special day with our real family. I zoomed in. Her parents were there. Her brother. A few of Brad's coworkers. But not one person from my side. Not even a single mention of me. I screenshotted everything. Then I looked closer. There were photos of Brad wearing the watch. My father's watch. The same gift I'd left behind in that church. Trina had captioned it, a gift from my wonderful husband's mentor. Classy, timeless, and earned.
Mentor? Not a word about me.
Not even a lie. Just silence. That's when I got angry all over again. I called my cousin Rachel. She lives in Chattanooga, about an hour and a half away. She's never liked Trina. I told her everything. She said, get in the car.
Come stay with me.
We'll sort this out. So I did. While staying at Rachel's, I told her everything about the cake, the motel, the way Brad acted like I was the problem. She didn't hold back. That woman's poisoned him. And he let it happen.
Rachel had a plan.
She works for a local radio station. Has for 20 years. They do a weekend segment where people call in to share stories, family, heartbreak, betrayal. She pitched my story with names changed, and they wanted to run it. I went on air that weekend under the name Mary. I told my story, exactly how it happened.
The cake.
The 6-hour drive. The door slam. The silence. The motel. The lines lit up. People called in crying, angry, sharing their own stories. The clip went viral on Facebook. Thousands of shares. And that's when something happened I didn't expect. Brad's old high school friend Darren messaged me. He said, Diane, I heard that story on the radio. I knew it was you.
I'm sorry.
You deserve better. I thanked him. Then he said, Trina's been talking trash about you for years. Says you're unstable, that you used to hit Brad when he was a kid. She's been rewriting history to justify cutting you out. I stared at my phone. I never laid a hand on Brad. I was strict sometimes, sure, but never abusive. Never even close. She was spreading lies. And Brad was letting her. That's when I realized this wasn't just disrespect. This was a campaign. A quiet, steady erasure of me from Brad's life. And I wasn't going to let it happen. After hearing from Darren, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about a birthday or a cold door. It was about the lies Trina had fed my son for years. Lies that made him turn his back on me. If I wanted to get back into Brad's life, I had to cut through all that poison. First, I gathered proof. I went back to Knoxville, but this time I stayed with Darren. He was a good friend to Brad and hadn't forgotten where they came from. Together, we collected texts, old photos, and messages between Trina and her family. Some of the texts were cruel, talking about how the country bumpkin mom didn't deserve to be at family dinners, how Brad needed to be loyal to Trina's real family. One text from Trina's sister even called me a gold digger for trying to visit. I printed everything. I made a binder thick enough to snap shut like a book. Then I scheduled a meeting with a family counselor in Knoxville. I told Brad I wanted to talk, just the two of us. He hesitated but agreed. I brought the binder. We sat across from each other, and I opened it slowly. Look at this, Brad. These are things I never knew until a friend told me. Things your wife and her family have been saying about me behind your back. He looked shocked, then angry, then sad. I could see the cracks in the version of his life Trina had built. I didn't want to believe it, he said quietly. I wanted to trust her. I thought she loved me. I know, I said. But love doesn't tear down your family. Brad stared at the pictures and messages. Then he looked at me.
I'm sorry, Mum.
I should have stood up for you. Sorry isn't enough after years of silence, I told him. But maybe it's a start. We talked for hours. I told him everything about the motel, about how lonely I'd been, about the hurt. He apologized over and over. He promised he'd call me more. He promised he'd see the truth. But Trina? I knew she wouldn't give up easily. That night, Brad told me he was going to confront Trina. I warned him to be careful. 2 days later, I got a call from Darren. Brad had called him, furious, saying Trina stormed out after a screaming match. I'm done with her lies, Brad told me. I want you in my life. It wasn't perfect. Not yet. But it was progress. Meanwhile, I made sure the truth about Trina's behavior was known in their social circle. The radio segment kept gaining attention. Friends who never knew the full story reached out. The fancy dinner photos got a new caption when I shared them online. Birthday party with real family, minus the real mother. Trina's reputation took a hit. Her snide comments stopped coming in public. She became cold, distant, not just with me, but with Brad too. In the end, Brad started to see who she really was. And I finally felt like the mother he'd forgotten but never stopped needing.
The watch?
I never gave it back. I keep it on my dresser now. A reminder that family isn't about fancy dinners or perfect smiles. It's about showing up, even when it hurts. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But you don't have to let them win. That's my story. I drove 6 hours, got slammed shut in the face, spent a lonely night in a motel, but I fought back. And in the end, I made sure the truth came out. Because family is more than blood, it's respect. If you've ever been pushed out or forgotten, don't stay silent. Fight for your place. Thanks for reading.